What's going on, YouTube family? We are less than 24 hours away from the big matchup, undisputed versus undisputed. Jermell Charlo challenging Canelo Alvarez. So I like to wait until the weigh-in is taking place before I give my predictions, but I've kind of already knew where I was going for about the last, I would say, month or so with this fight. So just to put it out there, I am predicting Canelo to win by late stoppage. And I'm testing my luck here because I nailed it last time with the last big fight, which was Crawford and Spence. I had Crawford knocking out Spence. Not dominating like that, but I did expect him to knock him out. So I'm gonna test my luck to see if I can go 2 for 2 with these big fights in recent months. Let me give you a couple reasons real quick why I'm going with Canelo. First reason, I like to call it Las Vegas's favorite counterpuncher, and I'm talking about Canelo. We know for a fact that Canelo's always been favored by the Vegas judges. We saw it even in the Mayweather fight. That's the most egregious one where he got a draw in that fight where he might not have even have won a round. But why is Canelo so favored? It's not just because he's a big superstar, it's the way that he goes about his offense. He's a very flashy puncher, thudding power, not a one punch knockout power, but his punches are very crisp, they're very eye catching. He gets a lot of torque on his shots. He turns his whole body into them, and that catches the judge's attention in close rounds. So in this fight, where I think both guys are going to be a little bit cautious of each other, if we have rounds where there's a low output, it's going to favor Canelo because Canelo's offense is going to be a lot sharper. Also in that facet, his offense is very is really varied as opposed to some fighters are headhunters. Some people focus on the body. Canelo does both. He works the body, he works the head, he goes upstairs, downstairs with his combinations. All that ties into catching the judge's eyes. And also, probably most importantly, he's normally the guy going forward in fights. And in close fights, the aggression, that type of aggression will give you the edge. But in this matchup, I think it's going to be compounded by the fact that he's competed at super middleweight for years now. He's comfortable with the weight. He's fought as high as 175. He's been hit by guys like Kovalev, Bivol, and we've never seen him wobble even at those higher weights. And even at the lower weights, he's still been in there with, some of the best punchers we've seen in recent years. Gennady Golovkin standing out amongst them, and he's never been in trouble in any of those fights. So I don't think Charlo's power is really going to phase him like that. And if we look at it, Charlo has been able to bail himself out when need be with his power. He's had no, trepidation hooking with people, exchanging, because he knows all he has to get in is 1 or 2 good shots, and that can turn the fight. That's what saved him in the first Castano fight. He was able to hurt Castano late a few times and eke out with a draw. And then in the rematch, his power was one of the main facets that finished that fight. We know in the Tony Harrison rematch, it was a very tight fight. Tony was at times, walking him down a little bit, but his power was able to turn it late and get that stoppage. But he's not going to have that advantage against Canelo because of Canelo's chin. So when it comes to the power and the offense, I think Canelo's going to have that edge, and his body work in particular and him coming forward, I think is going to wear Charlo down late in the fight and allow Canelo to get a late stoppage. Uh, on top of that, as far as that exchanging that I mentioned, as long as Canelo's been fighting, think about how many times you've seen fighters be able to exchange with him and brawl with him. You rarely see it. I can only think of one instance in the late rounds when he fought Alfredo Angulo, and that's because Angulo was desperate in trying to turn the fight around. He had taken so much punishment by then. The only thing he could think to do was try and, brawl a little bit and try and get a Hail Mary shot, and that just ended up with him getting brutalized more and eventually stopped. You look at Golovkin as, Golovkin was the bigger man, supposedly the bigger puncher. He never was willing to brawl with Canelo. You notice in that second fight, who was the one backing up and trying to box from range? That was Golovkin. So that kind of tells you really how strong Canelo is. So Charlo is used to being able to do that, and that's not something he's going to be able to do here. And if his, pride takes over and he tries to brawl a little bit, that can be disastrous. I think, Charlo does have a lot of heart, and I do think he's going to eventually try and do some of those exchanges, and it's going to be disastrous for him, particularly late in the fight. The next thing I wanted to cover, my second point would be the ghost of Errol Spence. So where am I going with that? Well, obviously, we saw what happened with Errol when he fought Crawford. One of the main reasons I picked Crawford in that fight is that Spence was coming in with a 15-month layoff. We're talking about over a year outside of the ring. And here you are facing the best fighter of your career, who's a sharp and deadly counterpuncher in Crawford. What are we seeing in this scenario? This is, Spence's stablemate. He's very close with Charlo. They have the same trainer and Derek James, and we're almost seeing a mirror image of what happened with Crawford as far as Charlo coming in 16-month layoff out the ring, compounding that an injury. Spence came in or was coming off an eye injury. In this case, Charlo's coming off a hand injury. But to compound all of that, Charlo is coming in 2 weight classes higher, which he has never been. I know there's been a lot of talk he's going to be more comfortable. He's not going to have to make weight. That is true to an extent, but he's also not acclimated at this weight, meaning that he's never been hit by anybody at this weight, let alone somebody who's probably the top fighter at 168 for the last couple of years hitting you. So he has no adjustment period whatsoever. Even if you look back to somebody like Andre Ward, when he went up from super middleweight to 175, did he go immediately and fight Kovalev? No, he took a fight. I think he actually had 2 fights to get himself acclimated at that weight, getting used to taking punches at 175 before he went in there with Kovalev. Charlo is doing none of that. He's going from 154 up to 168, and it's not like Canelo's going to be 168 in the ring. We can see when they had the ceremonial weigh-in earlier today, they had weighed in the morning, so they were somewhat rehydrated, and we saw how thick Canelo looked already just a couple hours after the actual weigh-in. Imagine how big he's going to be tomorrow. Charlo, this might actually be close to what he'll look like tomorrow, but Canelo, I'm expecting him to be even bigger and stronger tomorrow. So that's going to compound things. So to me, Charlo is really up against the 8 ball when you're talking about the layoff outside of the ring. You're talking about coming off an injury too, and you're not at your regular weight class. You're going 2 weight classes up to face arguably the #1 fighter at 168, who's a very good counterpuncher, hard to hit clean, and that recipe to me spells disaster for Charlo. Now, let me go to my last point, a little bit experimental, but see if you follow me here, or if you agree or disagree, let me know. This pertains to the business of boxing. I think a lot of times we ignore the matchmaking portion and what is the goal of this particular matchup business wise. So let's look at that for a second. So if you're Showtime, PBC, Al Heyman, you have Canelo locked in for 3 fights. That's a great thing. There's a lot of good matchups you can make there, a lot of ways you can, make money with this superstar fighter you have that you already know you can make money with by what you saw with the Plant fight. But if you're trying to make a big splash with these 3 fights, what's the best way to make the most amount of money, the most bang for your buck if you're PBC, Showtime, and everyone? Well, the main thing is you don't want your new deal to go up in smoke in the first fight, meaning you don't want the guy that you just signed to come out with a loss or not to look good or not have a favorable matchup. I think this matchup is the perfect setup for Canelo to look like a monster, just because of everything I mentioned, the weight difference, the layoff that Charlo is going to be coming in with, the fact that Charlo is a very prideful fighter. He likes to exchange, he likes to run hot in the ring, and, he fights with a lot of ferociousness. So he's going to be coming at Canelo, but it's going to be a disadvantage when it comes to the power and the offense. So I think this is the perfect matchup that's going to make Canelo look like a monster. Somebody coming up 2 weight classes lower, that likes to exchange, that has a lot of heart, that's never been stopped before, has lost, but has avenged all of his defeats. So this is really to make Canelo, to me, look good, to make him look good, look like a monster that first fight. And then that second fight, a lot of people are thinking it's going to end with Benavidez because we know that's the big matchup for a Cinco de Mayo weekend or something like that. I don't even think they're going to wait that long. I think if he beats Charlo like I think he is in dominating fashion, I think by May we're going to get that Benavidez fight. I think it's going to be hot enough where they do it now, especially with this news that Showtime may be at a boxing by the beginning of 2024. Have that Benavidez Canelo fight now, Cinco de Mayo. 2024, and then have that last Canelo fight be the rematch. If Canelo wins, it's still going to be an action fight. Benavidez Canelo, how can that not be fireworks? So a rematch is going to be welcome no matter who wins, and then you can do that rematch around this time next year. So that's what I think is happening. I think this matchup was made because it gives Charlo an opportunity. If he wins, he looks amazing. It's a monumental upset, and he's a superstar now, already a top pound for pound fighter. But I think the setup is to make Canelo look good, a really good matchup for him style wise, and that leads in perfectly to a Benavidez showdown. So let me know what you think. These are my 3 points. First one is Canelo's counterpunching power advantage. The second thing is a combination of the layoff and the injuries and everything that Charlo was coming in with. And then the third thing would be just matchup wise. If you're a matchmaker, this is the type of matchup you make that sets the stage for Canelo to look like a monster to lead into a Benavidez showdown next year. So if you're picking Charlo, let me know your reasoning. If you think I'm on point with Canelo, I still want to hear your reasoning. And the great thing is we'll find out in a couple short hours whether I'm completely right or whether I'm completely off. So looking forward to seeing you guys coming back here Saturday night and giving me your opinions on who's the new completely undisputed man at 154 and 168. All right, talk to you guys soon and see you at the next big fight.